Welcome to the deep dive. So, we've received quite a bit of information from you all about Permaconn alarm communicators. It seems there's definitely more to this always-on promise than the marketing suggests.
Exactly. And today, our goal is really to cut through that. We want to understand the real picture behind these devices.
Yeah, we're going beneath the surface. We've looked at installer feedback, user complaints, even some, well, pretty blunt article headlines you sent over.
It's about getting a complete view. We've sifted through quite a range of sources, trying to see past just the claims.
Okay, so Permaconn, often sold as, the gold standard, the reliable heart of your security. But some of the details we've seen, they raise questions.
Good questions.
So for everyone listening, here's what we're digging into. Is Permaconn actually delivering that constant security peace of mind? Or are there hidden costs, maybe some headaches you really need to know about?
Right. That's the core question. Let's start unpacking this. How about we begin with how these things actually play with other security gear? Compatibility.
Good place to start. Because if it doesn't talk to the rest of the system, what's the point?
Precisely. And one thing that popped up repeatedly is this issue with Bosch handshake failures, specifically with the PM45 and PM54 models talking to Bosch Solution 2000 and 3000 panels.
Handshake failures. What does that actually mean for the user?
Well, the consequence is pretty severe. Basically, communication just stops. The monitoring link is down. You get a permanent fault light on the system, and, well, your property isn't being monitored.
Wow. So the very thing it's meant to do, communicate an alarm, it just fails.
In those specific scenarios, yes. It highlights a real potential weakness when you're relying on tech from different companies working together perfectly.
That really undermines the whole always-on idea, doesn't it? A critical failure point. And it's not just Bosch panels, is it? There was also this talk about panel lock-in.
Ah, yes, that's another layer. Even if it connects initially, the Permaconn unit can apparently force the alarm panel into using its own specific proprietary communication method, its polling sequence.
Proprietary, so like locking you into their system.
Pretty much. It's a classic
Pro.
vendor lock-in tactic. It stops you from using any other, say, third-party monitoring devices or switches you might have wanted.
And long-term, what does that mean?
It seriously limits your choices for future upgrades or changes. You're kind of stuck with Permaconn's way of doing things. Less flexibility, basically.
Okay, so potentially less choice and maybe higher costs down the road because you're locked in. Not great. Let's shift gears. False alarms, always a major frustration. Does Permaconn have issues there too?
It seems so, based on the feedback. One specific problem mentioned is RF flooding.
RF flooding sounds disruptive.
It can be. The unit sends out these signal bursts apparently every 60 seconds. Now, if you have PIR sensors, the motion detectors that aren't well shielded.
The standard motion sensors most places have.
Yeah, those passive infrared ones, those bursts can apparently swamp the sensor, making it think there's movement when there isn't. Phantom activations.
Leading to false alarms.
Exactly. And you can imagine the hassle. Security patrols called out for nothing, the end user getting woken up or fined. It's a real nuisance.
Incredibly annoying and costly too, potentially. And this can snowball with video verification, can it? There's a loop.
That's right. So some Permaconn units integrate with cameras. If one of these sensitive PIRs causes a false alarm,
The RF flooding triggers it.
right, that false signal can then trigger a video verification event at the monitoring center. So now, not only do you have a false alarm, but you might also get charged extra because the monitoring center has to review video footage.
All stemming from a dodgy sensor interaction.
Potentially, yes. A basic sensor issue, amplified by the communicator's signal bursts, could end up directly hitting your wallet through higher monitoring fees.
Wow. Okay, speaking of hitting the wallet, let's talk costs directly. The ongoing fees seem notable.
They do. The figures we saw suggest the typical monitoring tariff for Permaconn sits around 40 Australian dollars per month.
AUD 40. And how does that compare?
Well, if you look at other similar dual SIM communicators on the market, the norm seems closer to maybe $25, perhaps $30 a month.
So quite a bit more expensive each month.
Significantly, yeah. Over a year, that difference really adds up. And it wasn't immediately clear from the sources what extra benefit justifies that higher recurring cost.
And it's not just the base monthly fee, right? There were also concerns about the SIM card data usage. Something about all-inclusive not being quite all-inclusive.
Correct. This was interesting. They might be marketed as all-inclusive, but the sources suggest there's actually a hidden data cap on those SIMs.
Hidden cap, so you don't know what it is.
Apparently not explicitly stated up front. So for sites that naturally use more data, think a busy shopping center with lots of sensors, maybe video clips being
We
sent.
could go over this invisible limit.
Exactly. And then they get hit with unexpected charges for excess data. It makes budgeting tricky and kind of defeats the purpose of an all-inclusive plan.
Right, all-inclusive. Up to a point you don't know, that's not ideal. And the hardware itself, does it last?
Well, the standard warranty is 2 years. But what installers are saying, according to the feedback, is that they often find themselves budgeting to replace these units around the 3-year mark.
Only 3 years? Why so soon?
Common issues mentioned were things like water getting into the unit, water ingress, and also physical damage, like cracks developing on the SMA antenna ports.
The bits the aerials connect to?
Yeah, those connection points. If they crack, the signal suffers. So this shorter practical lifespan means you're looking at recurring hardware replacement costs, not just a monthly service fee.
So warranty's 2 years, but realistically plan for replacement every 3, more costs to factor in. Okay, what about dealing with technological change, like a big 3G network shutdown recently? How did Permaconn handle that?
The 3G shutdown. That's a really telling point. When Telstra switched off their 3G network here, a lot of the older Permaconn PM45 3G units just stopped working. They became useless.
Bricked, essentially, so-called stranded assets.
Yeah. Exactly, stranded assets. And the key issue here, according to the reports, is that Permaconn didn't offer a free swap-out program.
No free upgrade, even though the network change made their product obsolete.
Apparently not. Customers were told they had to buy completely new 4G kits. And importantly, they also had to pay for the installation labor all over again.
Ouch. That's a hefty, unexpected expense for users who thought they had a long-term solution.
A really tough spot for those customers. It definitely makes you question claims about the products being, future-proof.
Yeah, let's talk about that future-proof myth. Newer models support 4G, even 5G now. But is that the end of the story?
Well, the sources suggest maybe not. While yes, current units do 4G, 5G, there's this next evolution coming called 5G RedCap.
RedCap, what's that?
Think of it as a specific version of 5G designed to be much more power efficient, really built for low data devices like alarm communicators. It's different from the broad 5G networks we have now.
Okay, more efficient sounds good, but what's the catch?
The catch is, it's not expected to be backward compatible with the current 4G, 5G tech that Permaconn is using. Meaning it's highly likely that when RedCap becomes the standard for this type of device, users will need another hardware upgrade, and probably another paid one.
So future-proof might only mean proofed until the next inevitable network evolution.
That seems to be the implication, yes. The cycle of paid upgrades might continue.
Okay, so hardware issues, network issues. What about the nuts and bolts? The documentation for installers? The support when things go wrong?
Yeah, that was another area of concern raised. The installation manuals were described as sparse.
Sparse, like not enough detail.
Exactly. Lacking detail, especially for non-standard wiring situations, or interestingly, hidden dip switch settings that might be needed for certain panels.
Dip switches, those tiny switches inside the unit.
Yes. If the settings aren't documented clearly, installers are left trying to figure things out on the customer site live. It's inefficient and, raises the risk of errors.
Not ideal when you're dealing with someone's security system. And if the installer gets stuck and needs help from Permaconn...
That's where the ticket backlog issue comes in. We saw reports of installers waiting, sometimes multiple days, just to get a call back from level 2 technical support.
Multiple days for security system support.
Yeah. And in the security world, where system downtime can have really serious consequences, compliance issues, actual security risks, waiting days for expert help is... well, it's often just not acceptable.
Absolutely not. Time is critical there. Okay, so let's pull all these threads together. We've talked compatibility failures, false alarms, higher costs, surprise data charges, short hardware life, force upgrades after the 3G shutdown, potentially more upgrades coming, thin manuals, slow support. What's the bottom line? What does all this mean for the end user?
Well, when you connect all those dots, the picture for the end user is not great. It points towards a total cost of ownership that's likely much higher than they might have expected initially.
Higher costs from where?
You've got potential charges from false alarms, thanks to that RF flooding and the video loop. You've got the recurring cost of replacing hardware sooner than expected. You might have paid for an unexpected 4G upgrade. And the base monitoring fee is higher to start with.
Plus the downtime.
Plus the downtime, exactly.
Right.
Longer periods where the system might be offline due to compatibility glitches, hardware failures, or just waiting for that support callback. It all adds up.
So that promise of a simple, reliable, set and forget system, it doesn't quite hold up under scrutiny.
Based on the information we reviewed, it seems not. Instead of set and forget, it could become a source of ongoing expense and, frankly, potential unreliability within their security setup.
Right. So, just to recap our deep dive, based on the feedback and reports you've showed, Permaconn seems to come with some significant potential drawbacks, despite how it's marketed.
Yeah, challenges around compatibility, those false alarm issues, the cost structure definitely needs a close look. The whole future-proofing question seems murky, and then there are the support and documentation
It's
concerns.
quite a list.
It really highlights why you need to look past the glossy brochures, doesn't it? Understand the potential snags.
Absolutely. So, for you listening, as you weigh up options for alarm communication, hopefully this discussion gives you food for thought. It shows why digging into the details is so crucial.
Definitely.
And maybe it leaves you with this question. Given everything we've talked about, the potential pitfalls, what are the absolute must-haves you would prioritize when choosing a security solution that's genuinely reliable and genuinely cost-effective in the long run? Something to think about beyond the initial sales pitch.